7 weeks of regular season play, 3 days of playoffs, and now 2 players remain. We have a BlizzCon seat to award to either Fenomeno or Seiko in this one. I'm Matt's Admirable, and joining me is Sottle. And Sottle, it's been quite a journey to get to this point, and I think that our finals for the European Grandmasters is absolutely perfect.
I think you set it up perfectly, speaking of that word, in the opening match where you looked at these 4 players and you're like, you know what? Whichever final we get out of this, like, it's going to be incredible. I think already to the point where we're at the semifinals, we had 4 players who performed phenomenally, who either have massive history behind them or have proven the hype in terms of Seiko, who hasn't quite had the camera time of some of the others. So I think any way you sliced it, we would have had an incredible finals. And that, of course, goes to show for the one that we do have between Fino and Seiko.
It was the 2 players from each of their respective divisions that were dominant in terms of the standings, where Seiko and Fino both had insane starts to their season, where it looked like until the very last matches of playoffs, of the regular season, they were going to go unscathed throughout that one. And now we've come to the finals here as well with the playoffs in the previous couple weeks, somewhat alluding to the matchup that we have in terms of their deck choices here as we now swap from a best-of-3 to a best-of-5 series for this finals as well.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Of course, the players will generally all want to play a bigger sample size of games inside the matches because it feels like there's more time to, smooth over some RNG effects that might swing one game. So players are always super happy when best of 5 comes into play here. So I'm sure these players will be very, very excited to be playing Specialist in a best of 5 format.
And kind of looking at the long-fought battle of their seasons, 15 players are going to have to wait for their chance the next season of this one. I feel like when you get this close, you can almost taste it at that point. The thing that I look at from a top-down perspective is that Fino last year, having an incredible year, had quite a bit of camera time under his belt. He had that finals experience where he picked up his first tour stop win versus Casey in Orange County. For Seiko, he has mentioned the couple of times that he's played against the pros in the group as it being a bit more nervous for him. And now with such a high-stakes matchup in place, the BlizzCon ticket for that global finals that's here, how much more is that going to play into things for him?
Firstly, I just love that line so much. Every time it comes out, it was never supposed to be shade, but it's just the most glorious level of shade I've ever seen. But it can potentially play into it. We will talk about player nerves, and sometimes we get backlash on that. Sometimes players say, no, nerves don't play into it. It's nonsense. I wasn't nervous. But Seiko is a player himself who has confessed to that and said, I felt it against certain players, against certain matchups, when it felt like the stakes were higher, when it felt like the quality of opposition was higher. Well, guess what? You have all of those things piling on top of you right now. With BlizzCon on the line and with Fino on Mage on the other side against you, you're going to be feeling the pressure. And
so we can take a look at that Mage deck now and see what we're in store for. I feel like having a secondary or tertiary plan plays so much more into effect in this one, and it actually might be more important than your primary deck, where that's arguable in best of 3. I don't think it's at all debatable in best of 5. You're going to play more games with a secondary or tertiary deck available to you by far in this one than you will with your main consideration. And so since he's facing off against Seiko's Rogue, I feel like those 2 halftime scavengers in the secondary deck absolutely necessary for a full 5-game set.
Yeah, and it's where the question has to be asked again, can you do more with your Rogue secondary? I was looking at the way Hunter Ace had done it in the previous series. He was actually playing 2 Frostbolt's main deck, so then when just those 2 halftime scavengers came in alongside that, he was putting together quite a solid anti-rogue package, whereas Fino, just with those 2 halftime scavengers, like you said, he can be playing up to 4 games in this series against Rogue with that tech.
Yeah, and taking a look at Seiko's deck, that Rogue deck, the tech that he has brought a bit of a divergence in that secondary deck, where the mainstay had been 2 Walk the Planks, 2 Fairy Dragons, and a Betrayal, opting to exchange one of the Walk the Planks for an Eviscerate, to both have an option of removal, but also to act as burst damage if you need it.
Yep, we talked about it a fair bit in the previous series, but if you're just joining it, that is kind of the one diversion from what is otherwise a pretty standard secondary deck build to bring against Mage. We did see in the second game the Walk the Plank potentially coming in clutch, but Hunter Ace was able to kind of blow past that with some ridiculous Conjurer's Calling outcomes. But it's definitely the go-to deck and has been for Rogue since very, very early on in Specialist.
And again, also, we're talking about the fundamental principle of what the Rogue deck is meant to do versus Mage in the matchup. I feel like it's meant to just pressure the opponent when they don't have the ideal draws, when they don't have explosive turns and they don't have crazy nonsense going on. Those are the games you're going to win as Rogue. You have a very consistent plan to punish them for weak draws. you are not going to beat their most absolute powerful things that they can do, but they have to have picture-perfect cards for that.
Here it goes. Seiko on Rogue, Pheno on Mage, BlizzCon spot on the line, Global Finals spot on the line. Pheno not even waiting for us to get into game before he rips that magic trick.
He's ready to go.
He is.
I would say that neither of these players have shied away from pace of play when they're confident in the actions they're going to take.
Yep. Both players that went their Pheno. Whoa, okay. All right.
You saw the look on Pheno's face where it's like, well, I guess if that's the draw, I'll do the thing. Spell, 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 Mana Cyclone.
Pheno's seen this movie before. He's going to spoil the ending. You play Mana Cyclone on 2 when the game hands you that.
And honestly, pretty reasonable pickups, I would say. They're not strong in terms of what he's going to set up, but they help fill up his hand. And when you're going second, that's one of the tougher things to do, I feel, is fill up your hand and get something done if you have a giant.
That's a good point. Definitely a little slow in the immediacy if Seiko can pick up some big tempo plays of his own and start piling on pressure. Certainly will give him some options later on if it does need to come down to hand size.
As Astral Rifts get cheaper with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, he's got another mirror image to add, and you see how Seiko focuses strictly on board presence. Goal number 1, get things in play. Goal number 2, disrupt the opponent and start attacking.
Pheno just slowing down now for the first time. Lots of options this turn. Seen both SIs being played, which are one of the key ways that Seiko would use to kill a Sorcerer's Apprentice, for example, which gives some upside to have that on the board here, protected by some mirror images.
There's actually only a handful of ways it dies, which would be number 1, backstab. Number 2, it would be a Blink Fox or a Hench Clan Burglar into Vendetta.
Yep.
And then number 3, an evil Cable Rat into
Kobold.
a Kobold Lackey.
Yep.
My assumption is if he's playing Sorcerer's Apprentice, that mirror image is coming down alongside it.
For sure, yeah.
But, you know, clearly interested in keeping his hand size up. Gets a pretty ideal outcome from the Cinderstorm in that spot.
Worth noting on the mirror image front, though, that Pheno does play 2 Sea Giants, where many decks only choose to include 1 at this point. So that mirror image is actually quite a valuable resource for him in terms of just being able to make big Sea Giant plays. So the longer he can hold on and be a bit greedy with that, the better he can get a payoff. And that is the dream on turn 5 against this board state. And I think you see that look from Pheno. Is like, all right, dealer. If you're going to be like that, I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, you're okay with not restoring life with this card if it means that you're keeping your opponent at bay.
Yep.
And I think that's really the big trick for Seiko here. It's easier for him, I think, to just present some counterplay against the Ziliax. But the problem is that he needs to present counterplay against the Ziliax.
Right.
So I think with 2 copies of Waggle Pick, start finding ways to generate.
That looks like a Sea Giant. It certainly is. So now Pheno can start piecing things together here. Some token generators off the... hello. Just a freaking Corkron Elite.
Look at the look on Pheno's face. All right, I'll play it then.
All right, dealer. If you're going to be like that, I'll just play it.
Always Shadow Step, the Novice Engineer. This is what I've learned.
What if Seiko is so attuned with the Shadow Step Novice line of play that when he doesn't have a Shadow Step, his Novice just always draws a Shadow Step?
Whoa.
Yeah.
What if you already have a Shadow Step equipped to your hero? Do you then always draw Novice Engineer?
Yes. Yeah, I think that checks out.
Oh, I mean, so far in our instance, we have a
100% hit rate.
Yeah, 100% hit rate.
Boom. Was it ever in doubt? Seiko picks up the Novice Engineer.
I hope you like my invention.
Ooh, does that Burglar change things? Indeed. Why not take the extra card?
Choose soon.
Arcane Shot seems the most likely on the surface. Snake Trap kind of plays into part of your opponent's game plan, which is Sea Giant. Arcane Explosion just far too weak an AoE effect to really have an impact on mage boards. 2 damage AoEs can actually be relevant in the matchup because of the ability to nuke, Apprentice, Cyclone, Khadgar, Mirror Images, all those kind of boards. 1 damage, it's not doing anything.
Yeah, we got a major turn here as well. Sea Giant, playable.
Very playable. Becoming increasingly playable.
Let's go ahead and do that first, just in case.
Yeah, 1 drops here potentially can come down.
I'll have the extra mana, so why not?
Yep.
And keep
Life
pushing the issue.
Drinker. A little bit of healing from the Life Drinker could come in clutch if it comes down to it. But
Seiko.
right now, it's looking like Fino does not have that problem.
Seiko's in some trouble. Does have a Sea Giant of his own, though. So question 1, can you kill Sea Giant? Nope. Okay, question 2, can you kill other things? Yep. Question 3, what can I play alongside of that?
I wonder.
With limited options and life total dwindling, I imagine there's some consideration for Life Drinker, for Ferocious Howl. I imagine Ferocious Howl is going to end up being the follow-up in one of the last plays, just because you need development.
Yeah, I mean, Ferocious Howl, I was kind of looking at for a second, just in terms of like what outs he can find off the card draw. And also the problem saying, you know, Ferocious Howl can be one of your last plays. Well, at that point, it's not stabilizing you very hard, right? Like, you're giving up on the armor potential, but it's just the fact that he's forced into such a defensive position that gaining armor just isn't defensive enough. He needs the board position to fight first.
That was my thinking, too. Doesn't need to stabilize, it doesn't need to be enough.
So yeah, we end up with the play that Admirable alluded to. Kill the other things, just contest the Sea Giant and just stabilize your health total with what little means you can.
And now with Fino's side, how much damage can I deal and how long can I deal it for? Well, Frost Nova gives you a lot more time.
It's a simple game in Admirable's head.
Well,
can I hurt my opponent a lot?
Well, once this point has been established, that's when I understand. Like, I think Fino's play early on gave you an idea of where his head was at. Let's start chipping away at life total. You know, his look when he generated the Core Chron Elite off Astro Rift, and like, might as well do it.
Yeah, when life gives you a Core Chron Elite, you make Core Chron Aid. That's just how it works. One spell Cyclone just for the development.
In either Flesh-Eating Ghoul or Banana Buffoon. I think the Ghoul is somewhat interesting here.
Easiest Flesh-Eating Ghoul of my life.
Smack him. Threatens lethal.
$12 showing. 13 with the ping.
If you kill a minion, it keeps going.
Yep. Which means Seiko must be purely defensive this turn. And this looks like about the most defensive thing he can do. But now 8, 10, 12, 15. No, he's still a little off even with Banana Buffoon and Life Drinker, I believe. So 12, Life Drinker is 15. Bananas plus the Buffoon is 17.
If you could spend all your mana and hero power.
And then he can Ray of Frost one of his own minions for 1 extra damage twice if he gets the Sorcerer's Apprentice down alongside that.
That's a front half of Ray of Frost.
Oh, is it? Is it really? Okay.
I'm sorry, the back half, rather.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, I knew what you meant, even though you said that completely backwards. How does that work?
Well, maybe do you use the second one first? I don't know. The first one has Twin Spell, the second one doesn't. Well, think about it. The first one has Twin Spell, the second one doesn't.
I don't want
Which one's the twin? The one with Twin Spell or the one without Twin Spell? Wait a minute. The banana on the... can he play the banana and trade in for value at some point? And increase the damage? No. I was thinking of something fancy. Maybe he can? Because he's getting like a similar amount of damage out of these cards.
Wait, is that the one extra? He just shipped 2 damage. No, he shipped 3 damage in, right? Or did he? I might have found it. Hold on. No. Okay. Right. Because in the world that I was imagining, you're Ray of Frosting one of your own guys to kill it anyway, so you lose that damage, even though that wasn't possible.
Ziliax. That could save this whole position.
Okay. And then?
Well, you have Ferocious Howl.
Yep.
You have Ziliax. You get to trade off the Flesh-Eating Ghoul with the Ziliax.
I wonder.
It's just a heap of health. Is that enough?
Well, the problem for me, I guess the Ferocious Hell cut does come down on top of it, right? Because just the Ziliax on its own, it heals for 3, it heals for 3 again if Fino has to trade through it. That only puts you on 8, which means the Giant would connect and kill you.
Well,
But yeah,
Ferocious Hell, 5 health.
Right, the Ferocious Hell being the kicker on top of that. Very,
So
very relevant.
many options.
The problem from Seiko's side is you have to just trade everything. You're not excited about that, but when you're dying and you get to trade everything, that feels a lot better.
Right.
How different the world would have been if that Snip Snap was already in hand.
Also true.
Unity, precision, perfection.
See, as you can see, it's just that Ferocious Hell that's keeping him alive right now. Otherwise, the Banana Buffoon would just go into the Ziliax and minus that 5 armor.
Is that 1 damage off?
He would go to 11 after the
No,
trade.
it's
So
2
13
off.
at the trade. So yeah, 10, 11. Yeah, 2 off. But now Fino's just out of resources and kind of behind on board as well at this point. Means he's struggling.
You're at 23. The counter lethal is basically impossible. I feel like with Seiko, you know, he's out of life drinkers and he's out of Ziliax.
That is true.
Can you just push and ping
Does he
and
just
go,
win the ping race?
you got to have it.
Yeah, I like it. Because Seiko actually just also can't race in this situation. He has to take all the damage off the board, so you are almost certain to find those 3 turns that you need to get yourself out of this.
You need a big Blink Fox outcome. You get 2 tries.
You're not wrong. Second chance, big evil miscreant outcome. Lots of kobold lackeys. Not those.
Or none of them. Goblin Lackey can buff up to a 5 attack somewhere on the Blink Fox. I mean, we're getting down to witchy Lackey outs.
And that's real messy.
You know, slapping himself in the face going, focus, focus.
Let's go.
I know it's close, but you've done what you can. It's not up to you anymore.
The 5 mana slot actually has one of the I believe, the second highest outcome to find Rush or Charge to be able to take care of some of this board state.
That's not it.
He's now going to 7, which is actually a very
not
poor
it.
number. Doing the best he can. He's trying to roll this onto a 2-drop, but that's not going to get him out of this mess. That is going to be lethal on the board for Fino. Seiko had to scramble there to find some outs, and it's the kind of position where, like, really knowing your percentages on Evolves and Conjurer's Calling and all that nonsense really comes into play. I like his first attempt to go to 5. Not sure about the second attempt to go to 7. I think he is 11% or so to get a taunt in that position off the 7-drop. But I'm not sure if the taunt was ever going to be good enough to get him out of it, whether he needed rush and charge effects just to actually eliminate the board and actually consolidate some board presence. Massively complicated. I could probably give you a decent answer if you gave me 3 minutes or so. He has 70 seconds to work it all out, and sometimes you're going to get that wrong.
Yeah, by the way, you're in the middle of your turn as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You have a lot of pressure on you in that situation. You know, for me, it's just that game 1 was the story of Fino all season long, where it's just no matter what, at every step of the way, attempt to find a way to be aggressive with Mage. It's a deck that is inherently not very aggressive on its onset and has to look for the turn to be the aggressor. And so when you're attempting that just every single turn, he's been finding it all season long.
Yep. It's crazy just watching Fino do it over and over again. There's a reason I keep calling him out as, you know, potentially the best Mage player in the world, is that he's put so many games into that deck. He was the early adopter of that deck, and he played it. He played it and nothing but it for a consistent period of time. And I think that does show in how he's able to navigate through some of these situations, and also just kind of some of his like player personality coming through as well in terms of just how aggressive he plays with the deck as on top of that. But now we are going to see some switch-ups. Very different situation from what we had in the semi-final, where Seiko picked up the important win with Rogue without the techs in, and then only had to bring down one more after that. Now he's on the losing side, and he's bringing in his techs. Feno's bringing in his techs as well, those 2 halftime scavengers coming in to fight back against Seiko. But the big story now, best of 5 in this situation. In best of 3, that primary versus primary matchup is everything. It's a massive chunk, a massive percentage of your overall win rate if you're able to take down that primary versus primary. Now, in a best of 5 series, there's more time, more room for the secondary and tertiary decks to grow into the series and really find out who's tech their decks better for the situation.
Yep, for Feno, that's just a couple of copies of Halftime Scavenger. He removes a Banana Buffoon and an Archmage Antonidas. Take a look at Seiko's. This has been the dedicated plan for Rogue for quite some time now. You added 2 copies of Fairy Dragon, you added a Betrayal. In Seiko's case here, he's adding in a Walk the Plank and an Eviscerate. He wants to have a bit of a flexibility in that slot where he dedicates that other removal spell. And so the game plan is just, again, get some stuff on board and take advantage of inconsistent draws. Now, in Game 1 for Feno, that was not an ideal draw. That was not the explosive mountain of turns that you expect to see from a Cyclone Mage deck, but it was good enough to get the job done. And so that, to me, is a big statement into how Seiko's games need to be going for him if he's going to win. He cannot fall behind early. And, you know, granted, he ran into a 3-spell Mana Cyclone on turn 2.
Right.
It's going to be a tough game. But that's why you add in this extra package. You added more minions, so that way you can make some headway. Seize the board.
Feno, though, blessed with the coin, blessed with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, blessed with the Ray of Frost. Oh! This hand has some heat going on. Seiko needed that. He needed that Fairy Dragon. That is essential in this position.
Blessed with a Fairy Dragon.
Yep.
That throws a big wrench into what Feno is planning here.
And it's honestly the only card that does so. You can see why Fairy Dragon has become such a go-to in terms of attack, because think of just about any other 2-drop in this position. Feno just has so many options to clap back against it. Can't do it against a Fairy Dragon.
I'll be curious to see how Seiko plays these next couple of turns, because the one philosophy that you could have is, number 1, risk the Lackey. Number 2, if I fail the Lackey, do I trade the Banana Buffoon to prevent my opponent from getting tempo?
Goodbye, Fairy Dragon. It was fun while it lasted.
You know, I'm not convinced you trade here.
Oh, I'm just saying the Fairy Dragon's dead, like whether you trade or not. I'm just saying the push has come to an end. I'm fully on board with pushing some damage if you want to.
Yeah. If Feno has to expend bananas to try to keep this Banana Buffoon alive, I think that plays into Seiko's advantage right now. And with 2 Vendettas and a Henge Clan Burglar in hand, I think he's got a lot of ways to keep fighting here. I like his risk on the Evil Miscreant versus just playing an SI7 agent.
What to do?
The Cable Rat, you mean?
Yes, I'm sorry, on the Evil Cable Rat, excuse me.
Looking for Kobold Lackey, which would just dig him out of this situation beautifully.
What's Feno playing alongside that if he's doing? He's just hero powering? That's not really the kind of turn you're looking to have, but I guess you'll take it. I mean, you're faced down a 1-1.
Yeah. Thinking that when there were 2 1-1s on the board, like using the bananas to trade just didn't really seem that appealing anyway, didn't achieve too much.
Now I'm interested. Do you want to try to get a Battle Cry from Blazing Invocation? Mind you, stuff like Evil Miscreant, SI7 Agent, Edwin Van Cleef, those are combo cards, not Battle Cry cards.
Yep.
And you discover from your class.
Also keeping in mind, you do have Spirit of the Shark in your deck, which does double Battle Cries and combos, so you can double dip off a Spirit of the Shark with anything you find off there. But if you switch your eyes to the far left-hand side of the screen, there is a Hex. Does he need it? With Sap, Betrayal, Double Vendetta already in hand, though.
That's a good question.
Does he need more removal, or does he want to look for a removal, a minion to play that has upside?
Think back to some of the Orange games in last week where he said if your opponent takes out Archmage Antonidas, you can just kill all their resources. It's possible to just kill all their minions. Of course, my head first moved to the Darkest Hour and went, well, I have a lot of lackeys in deck. What weird thing can I do with that?
Of course it did. Why?
It's the one in the middle.
Why is it every Discover?
The one in the middle.
The one in the middle is the weird, goofy card that no one's ever going to pick. And Admiral just like, one in the middle. Yeah. Sign me up.
Well, that's how the Discover works. A weird option and an option that is potentially aggressive, and then a removal option. That's like, just feels like how Discovers work on Henge Burglar.
What to do?
You got to have something for everybody.
That is true.
It's the Henge Burglar is the Neapolitan ice cream of Discover cards. But nobody ever takes strawberry.
I like the strawberry. I actually don't like chocolate ice cream. That is the one thing that I leave out of a Neapolitan.
It's not that I do like chocolate ice cream. It's that I just don't like strawberry ice
That's
cream.
weird. I love chocolate. I love ice cream. Just don't put those two things together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You're more of a darkest hour kind of guy. This is what the sideboard dynamic for Seiko creates, where when he has walked the plank, Fino just doesn't want to plop a Mountain Giant.
Right.
He's going to,
He will do it.
but that was the longest turn he's taken in some time.
Admirable is not wrong in his assessment. Just because the Mountain Giant came down, Fino did not want to just plop that Mountain Giant.
Option for max mana on Sap SI7 agent. Option for good thing with Hex. Option for max mana with Novice SI double Vendetta. I feel like you want your tempo options though.
Option for using your Vendetta before you have to go ahead and use your Hex by just playing double Vendetta.
Makes sense to me.
This guy's toast.
Yep, I like this one.
Max mana, max pressure, kill the thing.
Yeah, keep your Hex in hand, use the card that's benefiting of you having the Hex in your hand. Use the most situational removals as well. Vendettas are the kind of what-if answers. They need to have specific health values in order to be effective, whereas Sap and Hex are much more universal in their situation.
That is a huge draw for Fino. Look at this turn.
I'm looking.
That is not good for Seiko. This is the rest of his minions right now. The big one dies. You're going to see about 65,000 spells played this turn.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 65,000. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
And Seiko knows what's coming. You're hoping for some reason that he just doesn't. It's going to be like another invocation and concede.
Yeah, you just sat there thinking, he's just roguing right now.
Oh,
He's just coin, prep, conceding.
Somebody stop him.
Runs out on me.
We have reached 8.2 on the Admirable scale. There is not far to go.
This is not fair.
Scavenger comes into hand as well.
Conjur's calling.
Calling
Mitchell,
bites the dust, though.
I don't know if you need it, though. Like, you have so much going on in hand.
I mean, but that again, that's the thing with Book of Spectres. Just forget about it. That card was on the bottom of your deck. Like, it doesn't matter. Just ignore it. It never happened.
You're looking for the key minions.
Yeah, you drew a card. That's what you did.
Seiko's response to this is not strong.
So many options.
I'll give it a decent check mark.
It's a C+. He stays ahead on board. He takes care of the big problem, which is the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And this is a scenario I've talked about before when you're playing against Mage and you're staring up at a, 9-card hand. A lot of the times you'll be very fearful. You're like, well, they have 9 cards in their hand. Like, obviously they have powerful turns. When those cards are Cyclone cards, they are very entitled to just be useless garbage that they can't get any usage out of. So when you're in Seiko's spot, like, that's kind of where your head's at right now. Just, all right, it was just a mediocre Cyclone or a poor Cyclone. He doesn't have any big explosive turns. I just saw a Conjurer's Calling bite the dust, so that's unlikely to be coming out anytime soon. Like, Seiko, with a couple of key draws, might be feeling okay. It just so happens that that was a very good Cyclone that came out from Fino. Oh.
Not now, backstab.
That is the freshest of air drawn off the top from Seiko.
So many options.
It's looking like about that time where Seiko might be thanking his lucky stars that we're playing best of 5 in the finals. Because this one seems to be proceeding towards a 2-0 very quick, unless Seiko can conjure a way out of this.
I'll tell you what, though. Being in positions that are tough like this, I feel like Seiko has absolutely navigated them extremely well. When you have a slim to none chance, the difference in an extra % or not is like doubling your win rate in those situations. And I feel like Seiko has done an excellent job in those. And so for me, I'm picturing him holding on to this waggle pick for dear life and saying to himself, A, I'm going to pressure my opponent. B, I'm going to figure it out afterwards. Now, if he's going to use the waggle pick, what that tells me is he's looking specifically to just draw some burn damage to get out of this game.
My suggestion was about to be very similar to yours, where you just kind of set up and play towards a Leroy out by holding on to the waggle pick and just hoping you draw Leroy off the top in the next turn or two to be able to finish out the game. Backstab the 0-2, push the 3. I think Seiko shadow stepping this SI7 agent kind of just wants to get it off the board so there isn't something for halftime scavenger to attack into, maybe, which gains armor, but it's such a tough spot.
It checks a lot of tick marks. Number 1, you prevent the halftime scavenger arbor. Number 2, you prevent Feno from playing a sea giant. Number 3, you put a burn spell into your hand if you're going to play towards a burnout.
Sure.
One of the major issues is that Feno's got minions to chip away with, and 2 fireballs generated from a mana cyclone. So he's got a lot of push potential himself, and so his question is, how do I max that?
Right. Disruption secret for Feno coming down. It is a splitting image, but Seiko has to respect all range of options here. He has to think about what Vaporize means for him trying to set up a lethal out. He has to think about what Ice Barrier means for him trying to set up a lethal out. He has to think about what Mirror Entity means for Feno's counter push. All of these things start to come into play.
The thing that comes to my head immediately is if it's Mirror Entity, do you have a Betrayal position that makes sense? Nope. Attack face, it's not Ice Barrier. Bit of sigh of relief. So now how do you maximize this spot?
That also means he's not going to learn this turn that it is splitting image, which puts him in a very, very scary dilemma if he has to, roll against a Vaporize if a Leroy comes off the top.
Dagger and pass. That is not an 8-mana turn you're looking for.
Nope. Does mean next turn on a Leroy draw, he has 6 from the Leroy. That's 8 with the SI. That's 8 with SI number 2, and the dagger for 11, as long as that is not Vaporize.
So I think Feno, something he's thinking about is a combination of an extra spell and bigger attack with a Mountain Giant worth more than perhaps a Power Creation and some big outcome from this. Reckless Rocketeer. It's not enough for lethal this turn. But I don't know how Seiko fights back against that.
Yep.
So I think that Feno is thinking exactly of Leroy and Shadow Step. How do I beat that? And so at this point, there's no card that helps you do that for the mana considerations. So that's what Feno's hoping for. No Leroy and Burn. For Seiko, however, he doesn't need Leroy's Shadow Step. He has the 2 SI7 agents for it, but Leroy's not found.
Yeah, he just needed the Leroy. Feno, I think, was primarily looking towards, big chunky taunt minions that turn, which is actually far more common off the 6-drop slot. 12% of the minions do have taunt. Only 2 charge minions, the Reckless Rocketeer and the Argent Commander. But that'll do, just in terms of setting up a lethal out for himself. If Seiko cannot created by a wave to find a victory out of nowhere here, which I do not think he can.
Yeah, he can't clear this all off. Betrayal, SI7 agent. He could technically stay alive with Betrayal and SI7 agent and the improved morale. He is, in his mind, technically alive at 1 health. Says that's not enough, and I'm going to go looking for something better in that case.
Choose soon.
Evolve into Ziliax? Does that ever do anything? I'm thinking strictly from Seiko's perspective. Because with 2 fireballs in Feno's hand, he has the game wrapped.
Right. I'm thinking he's dead no matter what else he does, so he might as well go down this line, look for that Ziliax. Doesn't find it. 7 remaining on board.
2-0 to Feno. Woo! We still got another game, though. This is the finals. It's best of 5 time.
Yeah, 2 quick ones for Feno. Seiko with that tech coming in, he should be a lot more robust against that mage deck, but unfortunately, your opponent gets to play cards too, and those halftime scavengers coming in from Feno having a big impact there, just in terms of being able to really, not the intended usage in that game in particular, he just kind of got it down and started hitting with it, which, you know, minions do that as well, and sometimes that's good enough.
Yeah, just auxiliary usage. For me, though, it's the big one is, again, Mana Cyclone. That's 2 games in a row now that Mana Cyclone has played the big impact for it. The Mountain Giant coming down got checked, and it got checked in a pretty, substantial way.
Yeah.
I feel like when you have the backup of Mana Cyclone with Sorcerer Apprentice and a ton of spells after a Mountain Giant, you almost don't care if they blow it up at that point.
Right.
That set up the Mana Cyclone.
I think, way back when Cyclone Mage first appeared and, just about every player in the world was struggling to get a handle on it because it's such a complex deck. One of the first things that people kind of learned as a way just to get an introduction to the deck is this a Giant matchup or is this a Cyclone matchup? And as time went on, that became a very shallow and redundant way of looking at it. It's much, much more complex than that. But you can see that, like, even asking that question, comparing the power of Mana Cyclone to do what you can do with Mountain Giants is kind of an absurd thing to think about in the beginning, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just game winning.
Feno now with that 1-2 punch that he brings in from the secondary deck with the halftime scavenger and Conjurer's Calling. That's a turn he's going to be looking for.
Yep.
And for Seiko, it's once again pressure your opponent and see if they stumble.
We might just see Feno play his curve to get there. Yep, that is exactly what we're going to see.
I don't get it, but I do.
2-2 on 2, 2-4 on 3, 3-5 on 4.
This does prompt, I think, one of the stronger turns for Seiko, though. I think he was eyeing towards Evil Miscreant. I've seen him tend to prioritize that. He's going to look for the strongest way to use this coin.
I wonder.
It is just a 2-2 on the other side.
It is, but it's about divining what that 2-2 means. Like, why did your opponent play that 2-2? What's his game plan from this point? Like, can you get the read that he's intending to curve out more aggressively with minions from this point? Because if the mage is doing that, you kind of want to do the same thing as the rogue to be able to shut them down early on.
I think it's a tough call to make because one of the things that most aptly comes to mind for me is my opponent would pay Mana Cyclone so that way they can stop me from playing Fairy Dragon.
Yep. It's very true.
And now that you don't have a 3-3 in play, how do you kill the Stargazer Luna?
That's the big kicker, right? Is if Feno is just going to continue his curve here.
Way less impactful in Psycho's deck.
Yes. If Feno's just going to continue his curve, the 3-3 on board was just a far more threatening opportunity. Evil Miscreant is Evil Miscreant, and without activating the Miscreant with the coin there, he was going to struggle to do it for several turns after this point. Hello.
Wow.
Hello.
Behold the tools of
Wow.
creation.
Feno, I think, does have some interest in simply a trade in Conjurer's Calling here.
Agreed.
Do you need the payoff from Luna further when you've already drawn a card? And you picked up a card draw effect from it. It is hard to not draw cards, though.
Behold
That's my favorite
the
thing to do.
tools of creation.
This one that matters. No, just the Mana Cyclones. The chain stops. First turn, this turn, that Feno has not just developed max stats onto the board.
I think when you have 2 Sea Giants fighting for board here, yield some payoff. It forces Psycho to fight right back. Look for the turn where you get to slam Giants.
What?
Oh, how ironic.
It's just Faceless Lackey number 1. Look, Sorcerer's Apprentice. Faceless Lackey number 2, Mana Cyclone. I know it's called Faceless Lackey, but it doesn't mean you just have to copy your opponent. That's not how that works.
Look, the way I look at it is these are the cards that have been beating us, and we've recruited them to help. I mean,
I guess that's fair.
we got to get something.
Yeah.
I imagine that reaction is to the Khadgar Conjurer's Calling that's now in hand.
Something like that, yeah. If not this turn, then very, very key in the near future because Feno, because he played his curve early, because he fought aggressively for tempo, he's now in a relatively stable position where he can play a slow card. 4 mana, 3/5 stealth is very, very slow by the standards that the game is played at. and then kind of leverage that into Khadgar Conjurer's Calling the turn after if he would like to. Looks like where he's heading right now.
As long as it keeps
I mean, you brought these cards in for this purpose. This is what your nuts hand looks like.
Yeah, but like the point I want to make clear is that you also have to understand how you play the deck to move towards that position, which, you know,
Can't play passively.
Yeah, Fino just threw away all his cards, just got them on the board, fought for tempo as aggressively as he could, and what that did is it bought him breathing room, it bought him freedom, it bought him that extra bit of rope that he needed to just play 4-mana 3/5 and not be under big pressure, and then because of that, this happens.
And contrast that with the previous game where he held on to the Sorcerer's Apprentice for as long as he could. Wow.
No, not impressed. You did not see the last series. Conjurer's Calling, Houndmaster Shore, Vargoth, Vargoth.
I did see it.
What?
I did see it.
I'm sorry, if you want any reaction from me for the rest of the day, that's what you've got to beat, okay? That's vanilla, that's nothing.
Oh, it's something.
Hey, okay, it's something. You're right.
It's 12 attack and 20 health.
And it freezes Waggle Picks.
It was 5 mana.
Nah.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. I said Seiko is good at fighting back from behind, but this isn't really behind. This is just like Fino's approaching the finish line. You just need him to trip.
Hey, by the way, 0-mana Sea Giants next turn, potentially. In case you weren't already scared enough.
I'm very scared.
Sea Giants back to 1, Sea Giants down to 0. How much is Seiko going to respect it? How much can he respect it? I think the Khadgar has to go down anyways. It's just a natural byproduct. Those Sea Giants are going to rest at 2, which means this turn is equally, if not even more powerful than the previous one for Fino.
He could play 4 minions this turn if he wanted. Ziliax comes down. I imagine the Mana Cyclone's getting held in this spot. Double Sea Giants. And how on earth does this game get away from you? Thinking about betrayal positioning.
For sure. Betrayal, playing into a betrayal here is definitely one answer to that question. And then everything else is kind of out of your hands at that point. Like, you eliminate what you can play around, and you just bless RNG and hope that Created By does not find Seiko some tiny, small fraction of a % to get out of this.
And you're at 15, you have to fight back on board.
Yeah, Seiko just having to trade 8/8s with his Edwin Van Cleef. How many games of Rogue have you won where you've had to do that, Admirable?
0.
How many games of Rogue have you won?
0.
Okay.
That's about how many I think Seiko's going to pick up in this series.
9 more pushing through. A fireball from this Mana Cyclone could end the misery, even if Seiko were to find outs to the board. Doesn't get it. But there is still 11 more facing down on board. Seiko face frozen, board frozen. That eviscerate the first piece of removal that comes into his hand. He's going to go digging for a dream. What?
8 armor. Is 8 armor enough? 14, you get to kill a 3/4, and then you're facing down 8 points of damage. Ice Cream Peddler.
Sweet treats for shrunken heads.
He beats Hunter Ace in the previous round, and he gets rewarded with ice cream to find his way out of this horrible position. Excuse me?
He's just not dead. I mean, he doesn't really have anything left, but he's not dead.
Why, that's step 1. It's better than where he was before that Ice Cream Peddler appeared.
Can Grifta do anything too? Like, what can you generate from Grifta that makes a difference in this spot?
More Ice Cream Peddler.
What to do?
Oh, jeez.
Well, I mean, you gotta find something more than Ice Cream Peddlers. This is a Giants being Conjurer's Calling. We don't have time for tasty treats.
All right, take 2, Seiko. Pull one out of your hat this turn. Can I interest you in a nice Frost Nova?
There's a custom aboard every minute.
Nope. Also, nope. And I think that is going to do it. Seiko put us through the ringer. You can see what it means to Feno. Seasons-long ambition. Finally, as the emotions get on top of him, he is going through to the global finals at BlizzCon alongside Surrender from the APAC region earlier in the day. But again, much like with Orange and the other players eliminated Huntrace as well, my heart goes out to Seiko because it's a roller coaster of emotions to get that close and have it all snatched away from you. That's a couple of months of work that they put into that to get to that point. But hopefully it lights the fire under them to be back bigger and stronger for Season 2. Feno is the one with all the fanfare right now, and he's going to lock it down for BlizzCon.
I echo that. My hat's off to the other competitors for a fantastic season. But right now, Feno is in the center of the spotlight. A 10-4 regular season record. He shreds through the playoff bracket. I mean, look at how these series have gone for him so far. Just every step of the way, he's finding ways to get aggression and then finding a payoff for it. This could not have ended any more spectacularly for him on the deck that he's playing all season long to dominate. The one, I think, who opened up the aggressive potential as being one of the mainstays of playing Cyclone Mage the way it has been played, and closes out the final series 3-0.
And that's got to be a great image to be looking at if you're a Feno fan, or more importantly, if you're Feno himself. He is the champion of Europe. It's something that I believe he specifically called out in some of the interviews that we had with him, that, you know, he feels like proving himself to be one of the best players in Europe is such a huge thing to do because of the caliber of players that we have in this region. Well, he's not just one of, he's king of the mountain right now. He is the European champion of Season 1 Grandmasters.
And that was in his reactions all season long. Even towards the end, as he had locked up his playoff spot, the matches were still of intense meaning to him, or when things weren't going his way, he would not shy away from showing it. He would display that frustration and get that heat off his chest and say, you know what, I show my emotions, and yes, I'm frustrated by it, but it doesn't affect my play. I just want to win. It means everything to me.
Yeah, he'd throw shade at me on Twitter. He was getting so tilted about it. What's that about?
Well, you can ask him what it's about. We got Feno ready for an interview. Feno, can you hear us?
Yeah, guys. Hey.
Congratulations. You are the champion of European Hearthstone Grandmasters, and you're going through to BlizzCon. Talk to me about what it means to you.
Honestly, I can't believe that I beat these players today. Like, if someone told me that I would win today, I would be like, yeah, you're joking. There's no way. I don't know. I feel like every single one of them, like, because I really don't want to talk about me. Like, I think we should focus more on like the players that made it, this top 4. It's just crazy to me that like all 3 players that made it is all the players that I've been practicing with all season, like together with Boar and some like lately Bunny. But these are the players that I've been practicing with the whole season, and it's just amazing to me that like 4 out of 4 made this top 4. And I don't know, I honestly just I think I haven't believed it yet that I won. Like I came into this whole season with 0 expectations. Like I think I was in the hardest region by far. Like the players, like I think Europe is the only region, like actually not the only region, but I think like I always look up to like most of the players that are in the region, let's say. And I honestly just had 0 expectations. I didn't expect to like even make it here. So it's crazy to me. Like I haven't realized yet that I'm going to BlizzCon, I guess.
Well, I want to ask you somewhat about that. You know, last year throughout all the tour stops, me and talking to you, it felt like you had pretty high expectations for yourself in 2018. What changed coming into this year, and what made it seem like it was just a completely different world for you? It felt like you treated it much differently than 2018.
Honestly, I don't really have bigger I don't want to put big expectations to myself because I feel that's how people don't do well. Like that's how, like when I started Hearthstone, I was putting so many I wanted to do so many things, and I was always stressed. I always like wanted to prove myself and this and this and that. And it didn't work. The first year I played Hearthstone, it just didn't work. Like I wasn't doing well. And then like, especially Mazi, he told me that like, you know, like don't really put pressure on yourself. Just try to play your best and play like the games that don't matter, which is hard to do. But like, I think once you get to the point where you can like play carelessly and like don't overthink stuff and don't try to like prove people this and this and that, because like you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You only need to prove it to yourself, basically, right? And yeah, I think after I stopped doing that, I started doing way better.
Fino, buddy, why are you so good at Mage? Why do you ever play other decks? Like, come on.
I honestly don't know why I played any other deck. Like, to be honest, right before Vegas, I was like, everyone was like kind of rolling away from the Mage roller coaster. They were like, okay, this is maybe not that good. And myself too, because I was doing so well with the Rogue that I was like, this just has to be it. And then when we prepped for Vegas, we were like, okay, like Mage seems good in this tournament. Let's just try it. And then I had like zero practice in Vegas. I played it like terribly because I haven't played it in a while. But after that, I started picking up, and I feel like I improved. Like I came back to the level I was before with it. Because like I feel if you don't play this deck enough, like I don't know, there are just so many decisions. There's so many like the mulligan, like everything about it is just like you can do one turn rogue and then you lose the game. Like that's what I think.
So now that we've got you at the end of the season, what are your just overall impressions on kind of like the Grandmasters circuit, the format? Like, are you looking forward to BlizzCon moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't hate specialists as much as other people do. Like, I think it's a pretty fine format, and I think you can definitely get edges if you put the time into it and you actually like try really hard. Like, the first person that comes to mind with that is my teammate Orange. Like, I think he deserved it most out of all the people in the top 4. I haven't seen anyone like as passionate as Orange, and he just wanted so badly to win, and I felt really bad. Like I normally don't feel bad when I win, but like against Orange, I think it was like probably one of the few times that I actually felt bad about winning, because I don't know, he improved so much. He was so much more motivated than any other of us, like in the practice group. It was actually crazy. And yeah, like with this, I want to shout out to everyone, like Hunter A, Sean, Mazi, with Seiko, Lina, I practiced a bunch, Boar, of course. And, like they just really helped me get to where I am today. And I don't want to like take credit for any of this, because, I mean, I got luckier. Maybe I was the better player for the day, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, I still think the other players are in the same level and if not better.
Well, Fino, I think he's a very gracious champion that we have here today, and I think all the deservingness in the world for you to it. When you pit your wits and will against luck, you let the cards decide the rest. And today, they definitely landed on your side. Congratulations on winning European Championship, and we'll see you at BlizzCon.
Congrats, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
You can see it's a very emotional moment for him, and I think rightfully so. This is something that he's been chasing after for a very long time, and he mentioned the work ethic of the others. But I can tell you, Fino has a pretty similar work ethic in his own right.
Oh, for sure. But I think that's so huge that, the first thing that comes to mind after he collects his thoughts, we saw how emotional he was in his last moments on camera. He goes away for a minute or two. He comes back, and the first thing he wants to talk about is, hey, don't talk about me. Let's talk about the other guys that were in this group, because they are just as deserving, if not more so, which is a point that we've really like hammered home throughout the day, is that top 4 was incredible. It's nice to hear him giving some love to Specialist as well. Of course, the guy that wins the tournament is going to like the format, right? Like that just makes sense. But I think as time has gone on more and more, I think personally I came into this with a fairly negative view of Specialist as well, and it's impressed me over time, like week after week, in terms of the things that you can potentially do with it.
Indeed. And so with that, we have concluded our European Hearthstone Grandmasters with your champion, Fenomeno, in this one. But we still have Americas left to decide. We got one more player to send to BlizzCon, and this is the top 4 we're going to be working with for that. Frozen taking on Purple first up, and then Eddie taking on PNC right after that. And then in the same fashion, it's a best-of-5 finals that they will be playing in, but they got to get through each other first.
Yeah, and it's kind of, old guard versus new guard in terms of that first matchup, Frozen versus Purple, two of the older heads of the Americas scene, longtime competitors, and then Eddie versus PNC on the other side. Both have been knocking around for quite some years. Eddie, formerly known as Sohyun, of course. PNC have been a big deal in the South American region up until this point, but never really got that level of exposure. So they're kind of, the new blood coming into Grandmasters. I think that's an interesting dynamic dynamic that we'll see play out in a potential final.
Well, the time is nigh. We now have 2 players that have earned their ticket through. It's Surrender and it's Fenomeno of the Asia Pacific and European regions, respectively. So we got 3 more matches left to play, which is what we have for the remainder of the season. Our final is coming up in just a moment. So stay tuned here, our Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas region.